This conference will now be recorded.
Yep. And yeah, I believe someone else logged in with the OCP 3 credential. So when I try to log in, it says that the meeting is running. That's the reason why I'm a little late as well. Cool.
That may have been me. Sorry about that.
Okay. And great. So, yep, I have something to share today. Let me start to share my screen. To my stuff. Okay, now it's really March, and it's our first meeting after the OCP Global Summit cancellation. Hope that everyone is still safe. Yeah, coronavirus is impacting everyone. So the good news is OCP Foundation have already communicated we're gonna have a virtual session coming up. So I will probably spend half an hour on that in the second half to go through it. Um, and then the first thing I would like to cover is about our community update. Um, on behalf of the OCP Next subgroup, I supposed to meet with Tektronix and Xilinx in the OCP Global Summit, which was cancelled. However, we do follow up with some telephone calls that they are showing some interest in contributing to our group, at least join us to see what we are doing. I think Tektronix will be a good complementary to our Agilent partners who help us on our compliance testing. And Xilinx's participation mainly they are interested in two areas. The first one is they do have a NIC in the past. They have the Mezz 2.0 and now they have a NIC 3.0 version of the NIC. And they also recently acquired Solarflare, which is a NIC company. So they want to join us so that they will learn more about what we do and some of the future definition work. So once I have something more solid, and probably when they join our call, and we can share more and see what's their interest and ours, how we align them. Okay, the next one is specification. Is Thomas on the line?
It is, but there's someone
Yeah,
vacuuming by his tube.
yeah, so I apologize if you guys could hear a vacuum noise behind me, but I am online.
Actually,
They
no,
are
we didn't hear
cleaning
the.
a cube. So if you want to come back to me in like 5 minutes.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. Go to mechanical update. So Josh is on the line. Josh. Josh, you there? Are you on mute? Oh, okay. Josh kind of says that there's an audio issue. Okay. So yep, we will skip Josh first and go to Submit. Signal integrity update. You have something to share, Submit?
Yes, so far actually, I sent so in the SI working group. So we met last month. So Intel and Intel presented their analysis on the channel loss budget for the PCIe Gen 5. So far, all the data points which we have, so far we have the data from Intel, we have from Marvell, and also from Facebook and HPE and all the data so far is converging towards to kind of maintaining the 8 dB channel loss for the NICs. So we'll have more data points coming in from Dell and Mellanox. Expect to have it next week. So once we have all the data, then we can probably bring it all together to provide a consolidated view. But at this point, that's what it is looking like. The trend is to maintain, to keep alignment with the chem. There are also some things which all the analysis kind of are showing that Gen 5 probably will require low loss material for the implementation both on the platform side and also on the NIC side. So that's something, it's not really impact part of this per se, the spec, but that will something will just as an FYI, I think that's where it is trending.
Samit, just now you mentioned Dell and who is gonna present next?
Mellanox.
Mellanox.
Intel will probably have some more data as well.
Yes, thanks, April. Yes. And the other thing is also based on the analysis, and April can confirm that also, based on the Intel's analysis, it looks like the long LFF is a more limiting factor. So there are
Yeah.
some conversation points with, yeah. So there, I think in the SI working group, there are some other some discussion points which we need to close out on is how do we define the species, the Gen 5 budget? Do we define it for both SFF and LFF, or is there an opportunity where we can define it for SFF and have some additional constraints on the LFF in terms of how it is implemented? In from both from the like implementation in the sense of the LFF has some retimers there or limiting them to say by 16 lanes. So so
Okay. Samit, just now you mentioned about trending 8 dB. So 8 dB, it is not really the CAM Gen 5 also, right? It is something, and this is talking
I thought
about the
the
NIC, right?
yes,
I
this is the
thought
neck
the
loss.
Gen 5
Yeah.
chem is 9.5.
Is Cam Thomas? You said it's 9.
I thought it was 9.5.
Um,
But so this is one thing that I was looking through the latest draft of the chem and I didn't see a value spec'd out. But
Yeah,
in
from
some of the presentations, it's 9.5.
yeah, we're trying to get a straight answer on that, but it might not be
yeah.
8.
Okay. But ultimately, most important is we define something um, for the NIC form factor. So a
Mhm.
CAM is a good reference to start, but ultimately we need to come up with a number that our NIC vendors and our baseboard vendors are comfortable with.
Right.
Okay. I understand that we're talking about mainly PCA Gen 5. Is if CXL is as I understand, the electrical are very similar, if not the same. It is something that we should also look into.
We can definitely probably bring it up as a survey, I guess. That's what I would think. Like, if that's something which we need to incorporate, that's my thought. Should, should we just do a poll?
Do a poll on CXL. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think CFL might not be game time soon, but given that it is a PCI Gen 5 electrical, it is very similar to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think if you can consider it together, that will actually help instead of we do it once for PCI Gen 5, and in case CXL is slightly different, we do once more for CXL. There will be a lot. There will be
Mm-hmm.
double effort. Yeah. At least just look into it. If it's too different, I think it's very okay to be two different specs. But I think before we finalize the PCI Gen 5 budget, it's good to consider CXL and see whether we're going to include CXL or not, or make a conscious decision of exclude CXL if there's a reason for it.
Okay. I think we could probably bring that up in the SI working group.
Yeah.
Good point.
Okay. Okay. I see Josh is back. So Josh, your audio is fine now?
Yeah, I think it works. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hey, well, thank you.
Okay, excellent.
You want to give us an update on the mechanical side?
Sure. Can you go to that slide? It hasn't come up. There we go.
Yeah.
So we just for the benefit of the group, we have had some reports of some ODMs reporting a loose NIC latch implementation. This is actually something that was expected, and I think it's the ODMs that are reporting this had previously seen the old revision of the faceplate implementation where we actually used a wave washer in order to put some force onto the ejector to have it more positive. When we moved away from the old architecture and we moved to the clinch hardware to attach the ejector to the faceplates, we actually removed that wave washer, which changed the design a little bit. So there were some reports from the field due to this kind of unexpected change, I guess is how to put it. But everything with that is as designed, and we are reporting to our ODMs in particular that this is okay. If you have any of your manufacturers that are reporting this, please let them know that latch in that condition is actually expected per design. We don't actually anticipate it to cause any issues for us whatsoever. So that's the first bullet. The next one is there is still an action item for a mechanical compliance keep in and keep out jig. This is something that we lost track of towards the end of last year because we were so busy closing off on the spec, the 1.0 version of the spec release. We will be reaching out to some folks to see if they can volunteer some time to help create that design, and we'll get it built so that it'll be available for the community to use to inspect mechanical aspects of the NIC form factor. So that's all that I had. Any questions at all? Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks, Josh. Go back to Thomas.
Okay, great. So everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. So between the spec release and today, there's been a couple questions that we raised about fan on aux, temp warn, temp crit, as well as the severity threshold definitions on how to define that on a NIC. One of the things in the spec today, I don't think we absolutely define how fan on aux is asserted relative to temp warn or temp crit. I think, and also if a server were to see a fan on aux assertion in main power mode, what will it do? Some of the questions those were some of the questions. It looks like the answers are Theon, Ox, and Temp Warn likely are asserted at the same threshold. When you get a Temp Warn, Theon Ox is asserted. And then secondary, if Theon Ox were to be asserted when the server is in main power mode, looks like most of the server guys say it will be ignored. The other topic, this was, I think I started last week, was the severity threshold definitions. This is, in PLDM, we have the upper warning, upper critical, and upper fatal. The spec today largely defers that to a vendor, a NIC vendor, to define. However, some of the questions that came up internally was, how does a baseboard vendor interpret those values, and when would they actually take action? For example, I provided an example of 10 degrees C delta between fatal to critical and critical to warning. It looks like some of the baseboard vendors work on very little margins, so a 10 degrees C delta is not a feasible definition. I think there are additional questions that need to be solved within the work group. So I'll try and follow up on that email thread. But that's what I have so far.
Okay. And after it close to an email thread, will it be clarified in the spec update?
Yeah. So the ultimate end goal would be at least provide some guidance in the spec. I know that trying to get a hard value, a definite value, is not a feasible thing because that depends on the silicon and the design.
Mm-hmm.
But at least providing some guidance on how to set those thresholds, that would be good for all the baseboard vendors and all the NIC vendors. You know, that's the ideal case.
Yep. Great.
For example, yeah, right now we just leave it up to the NIC vendors to decide. And if we have a NIC card, you know, from vendor A and B asserting a warning at different thresholds, the server, you know, may see that as a non-issue. And what happens, you know, down the line from there.
Okay. And this got triggered by some kind of baseball vendor question, or it's more like some proactive work by someone?
I'll be frank, it's triggered by an internal question from us, right? I think the spec today does not define that well enough, and as we're going through and defining these values, it became more clear that we needed a community support for a general set of guidelines.
Yeah, makes sense.
Furthermore, you need to track the fact that cable vendors, and since reporting temperature sensors even from the cable modules is going to use PLDM thresholds, and SFF defines the threshold to be reported directly by the cable modules, then this goes beyond the ability of this forum to even state anything, because, you know, cable vendors are not part of this forum at this point in time. Some of them at least, and the readout of the thresholds from the cable modules are going to be reported using those same semantics of warning, critical, and fatal as defined in PLDM NIC modeling, which is referenced by the spec.
So Yuval, this is Paul. I think the
Yes.
challenge is that definition of warning is just ambiguous.
Well, it is what it is. Warning is defined in PLDM for monitoring and control.
Exactly.
The highest temperature for the normal operating range, meaning that once you reach that, you do not yet exceed anything in terms of reliability or anything like that, but you should not plan on operating beyond that point. So if you get to that temperature, it's highly recommended, to say the least, to activate the sufficient cooling resources to get the temperature a bit below that threshold.
So I think the difference between that and critical is not very clear.
Critical is also stated very clear. It states that If you cross that threshold for a short period of time, you may be okay, but there is no guarantee on that one, because once you cross that threshold, you start potentially to accumulate performance degradation. And performance degradation is vendor specific. So this is not yet a threshold that mandates immediate unmanaged shutdown of the system or that particular card, but you should not be there because you definitely are going to accumulate degradation of be it life expectancy or accuracy or whatever parametric degradation of that device.
Yeah, so I think that is clear and that's good, but I think the difference between what you described in the first one and the second one isn't so clear.
Let's
Or you
say
just say
that you
normal.
are designing your car to operate under normal conditions, let's say.
What does that
if
mean, normal
one-
conditions?
Okay, normal is the designated operating range of the card, okay? So you could mark warning threshold as the
But
upper
is it, how is
limit
that
of-
different from when saying, oh, it's not going to be degraded and normal? What's the difference between no degradation and normal?
There's no distinction between the two. Because of that, warning is defined as the temperature that it's not recommended to exceed, and you should be notified that you have reached kind of the end of the designated temperature range that is okay, but you should not exceed that one. If you want to have kind of the full spec compliant by that device over the committed lifespan of that device.
I'm almost hearing you say there's no difference between warning and critical.
Let's say, for example, that there is a degradation on the lifespan of the device because of whatever electrical reason inside the silicon.
Sure.
Then you'll start accumulating such degradation on the critical threshold.
That's right.
Until you get to the critical threshold, you do not accumulate any damage.
That's right.
That's the distinction between the two.
But, so what's warning then?
Warning means it's the temperature that says, okay, you reach your kind of end of the designated operating conditions, start cooling down, because it's not recommended to exceed that threshold. That's it.
Okay.
And it's
so how do you tell your
really
thermal
defined
engineer how to
that-
calculate that warning number? What specific instructions do you give him? I think he knows how to do that critical number, but what instructions do you give him to do the warning?
To whom?
To the engineer who needs to figure it out.
This is part of the thermal design of your product. Your reliability team needs to define that threshold or that set of thresholds actually. And it's really, for example, recommended that the accuracy of your temperature measurement sensor will be taken into consideration when you set those thresholds.
So are you saying that the difference between warning and critical is primarily related to the accuracy of your sensors?
It may be related to the accuracy of the sensor. Let's say that your uncertainty of temperature sensing is about 2 degrees, just for the sake of the example.
Sure.
Then you cannot set your critical sensor to be your designated temperature point that starts to accumulate damage. You should set that threshold to be at least 2 degrees below, right?
Yep.
So this is how you set those. And similarly, if you know that the amount of noise in your sensing is, let's say, 1 degree for that sake. So there is amount of uncertainty, a temporal uncertainty on each and every sampling of 1 degree. Then you should also set the hysteresis on those thresholds to be at least 1 point something degrees to guarantee that you won't generate too many events or noise in the system by false notifications because of that. So all of that needs to be taken into consideration when you define those thresholds. But this is really vendor-specific implementation. It's the vendor responsibility to provide the right.
Do the system suppliers want us to have a vendor-specific implementation of warning, or do they want us to standardize on that? I guess is my question.
The only standard in the spec is the ambient temperature. Your junction temperature, it's your own parameter. No one really cares about your junction temperature. It could be, the sun temperature, if you can sustain that as long as the ambient conditions are met. No one really cares about that. You just need to obey the system conditions, right? So for that reason, this is vendor specific.
Okay. I think I'm rat holing now, but I appreciate your perspective. Does anyone else have a perspective on this topic?
Yeah, and I also encourage the perspective to be written down in email. I think you already provided that, and there's some
Yeah. But I'm just trying to bring it out. That's and I absolutely approve. If people do have this perspective, to write it down. Sometimes a conversation like this can bring it out. So that's why I ask.
And from Facebook's perspective, I'm getting a thermal engineer to take a look at it before we respond to anything.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sounds good.
Yin is a thermal engineer.
Perfect.
Sitting next to me.
Okay. Yeah, so Damien, I'd really appreciate that from an end customer perspective. That would be really helpful in terms of how you want to use warning. Okay.
A good example, by the way, that system may want to dictate minimal hysteresis on the warning threshold, since typically the warning threshold is going to activate the fan's speed or to maximize the fan speed, is, I guess, not to have too narrow window on the hysteresis on the warning, so that the toggling on the fan speed will be kind of minimized in terms of how many such events take place for system level reliability, for example, if it's kind of an on-off control of some fan or whatever. This is something that may originate from system vendors, but the thresholds themselves are something that are definitely vendor specific.
Yeah, I can see that will likely be no one size fit all kind of thing, but we're gonna get some definition and some alignment or understanding. I think that's probably what we can do.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard to understand how an end customer like yourself would utilize warning if each NIC vendor has their own way of thinking about it and calculating it.
Yeah. We will provide the official response in email.
Yeah. It's simple enough. You put on your sweater a different temperature than I do it, right? So this is really vendor specific.
Right.
The same applies to fan requirements and so on.
Yeah, because I think well, from a system vendor perspective, there are many things that report temperature. Like NIC is one of the smarter one. I think there are some like CPU and NIC are maybe the smarter one. We also have other temperature from SSD or someone. So we still have to make some guesswork sometimes. And this may not be that different. But if we can define better, there's help the system vendor. That's generally my thought, but how we do it and that kind of thing, we respond in email officially after Yin take a look at it. Okay. Yep. And likely we're gonna talk more next month regarding this our summary on this area. So I want to switch to the topic that I want to spend more time on is our virtual global summit. So at this time, what has been communicated by OCP Foundation officially to all of us would be the virtual global summit will held in the week of May 11. Unofficially, I heard it's a multi-day event. So and then I I just screenshot of what was mentioned there is mainly about what can we expect. It seems like it is all of a key component of Global Summit will be in there. It's pretty amazing, including like expo hall talks, engineering workshop. Um, the thing that we spend a lot of time on, like OCP Experience Center, is still there. Um, and the OCP Future Technology Symposium, which the day before was still there. So it seems to me like a full experience. But personally, I also have some question about how do we do it in a virtual environment, especially for some of our demo, which we have partnership between vendors and baseball, NIC vendors and baseball vendor, and even mechanical component and stuff like that. Those are the open questions that I have, but this is something that we need to work with OCP Foundation when we get more guidance. From a work group perspective, I obviously hope that our work group can continue to support OCP Foundation in this and make ourselves available in the week of May 11 to attend the virtual conference and share our good technology with the rest of the world. And frankly, this might be even better for some people in out of the states, because it may be cost prohibitive to travel for the event, but now if it's virtual, I guess we have a wider outreach. So there's the positive side of the things. And regarding how to do it, I think is the next step details.
Hey, Damien. So it's Thomas. Just two questions. One is actually a concern. So if this is a live event to take place U.S. time, what about for all our partners around the world? Do you have any ideas on how that's going to pan out? I mean, are we going to have a recorded session as well?
I have some unofficial answer, but I'm not sure whether they are representative of OCP Foundation. I heard that some are recorded, some are live.
Okay. Will the live, well, hopefully the live ones could also get recorded? I mean, is SNTech still doing the recording?
Yeah, but the live one will be like panels are live. So that's unofficial. So don't quote me on that. It could change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something like the Experience Center would probably be recorded.
Actually, I think it's still under definition, but there are some idea is go to some kind of studio to have the demo there, and people can ask us questions live and we answer from there. So some people are co-locating if that's the case, but I'm not sure how it works it out. I think these are some of the ideas. It's not really pan out. If you have idea how to do it, I think we can also feedback to OCP Foundation. But at this time, I only hear the Facebook side of story. I didn't hear the OCP Foundation side of story. So I don't want to over communicate, but yeah. And Facebook also is part of it that give foundation ideas. So foundation might choose to do it that way or not. So it just, I'm sure Intel and the key partners are also providing feedback to OCP Foundation, and they are evaluating it. Quick check. Are most of you available in the week of May 11? Hopefully you guys can move your calendars around that, because I think I really appreciate Intel, April, and as well as Mellanox, ELAD, working hard to set up the OCP Experience Center on behalf of our subgroup, and the Lightning Talk on behalf of subgroup. I really hope that while we cannot do it really live in the global summit, but a virtual one, we will still share the work we have done to the global team.
Yeah, I agree. people put a lot of work into their demos, so it'd be great to still be able to share them somehow.
Yep. And then April. So once we get more information, well, we might still need to work with FN Tech or OCP Foundation on the new layout or whatever demo we're gonna do or how we're gonna do it. So unfortunately, there's still more work on that front, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe, Damien, we need also to, given the new format, shorten, I mean, the sessions. So if we're going to have this format, it's going to be hard to keep attention on the longer presentations. So maybe that's something we can all agree on.
I think it's good to consider that. Yeah, as part of it. I'm not sure we're gonna do it or not, but it's good to keep it in consideration. Also
See,
depending on the format we're gonna.
I mean, to make something more consumable, right? So our sessions will be easy to consume and to be streamed globally. We need to tune to this new format. Let's see how and what needs to be done.
Yeah. By the way, I'm not sure whether you all have joined the AWS Innovate conference before. It's also a virtual conference. I was told we are trying to do a similar one as them. I mean, just to give an idea how it looks like. I think if you're interested, you can sign up. AWS Innovate is free, and you can see what experience you can get from there, and whether anything you like, anything you don't like, and probably you guys can feedback to me, and I can bring it to the OCP Foundation as from our subgroup. If you have any feedback around that. Yeah, and we definitely joke about doing virtual gear and headset, but I think it's not game time at now. Maybe next time. Okay, I think that's all I have for this week. So when we hear more from OCP Foundation, we definitely will kickstart some of the preparation for the virtual global summit. Anything else we'd like to cover? Okay, if not, so let's adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Damien.
Thanks, Damien.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks the team.
Bye.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.